Welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander. It's the 9th of June 2013 and we are in Copenhagen, where Exopolitics Denmark is hosting their UFO conference featuring American UFO researcher Robert Hastings and British UFO researcher Timothy Good. Robert Hastings is an American UFO researcher and the author of the book UFOs and Nukes. To date, Hastings has interviewed more than 140 military veterans who were all involved in various UFO incidents around U.S. nuclear military sites. Robert Hastings, thank you very much for being here with us for this interview for Age of Truth TV, and welcome to Denmark.
My pleasure, thank you.
Approaching this interview, I would like to do it from a more journalistic point of view and also speaking with the people's voice. So I would like to begin this conversation by asking you a very simple but also very important question. Does UFOs and otherworldly beings from different planetary systems or dimensions possibly, do they exist? And what makes you so certain of that?
What I can say with certainty is that the U.S. government since the 1940s has been analyzing situations where craft are flying around weapons, nuclear weapons sites. The radar data confirm that these craft can do things that no aircraft on Earth can do. They fly thousands of miles per hour. They instantly do right-angle turns, 90-degree turns, or instantly stop. The documents say this. There are multiple radar scopes, picking up these objects. The people on the ground who see them say they're circular in shape or triangular or cigar-shaped. We don't have aircraft like that. The Russians don't. The Danish people don't. So in my view, this is a technology from off the Earth.
It's been said that the military, particularly in the US and possibly also in Russia, has highly developed technology that is approximately about 50 to 100 years ahead of what the general public has been told. Don't you think that they have this possibility? You've been researching military bases. You were born at a military base. You can tell us that. But don't you think it could be military crafts that people are seeing when they're witnessing UFOs?
But what is being reported now is identically reported in the 1940s. In the 1940s, Russia was destroyed, the Germans destroyed their technology. America certainly didn't have flying saucers in the 1940s. And so what is being reported, incredible cases, documents of flying discs and so on, at that time there was no country on Earth that had that technology. Whether we have secret craft now, the Russians, some other countries, possibly. But if you have a secret craft, you don't fly it around the public. You keep it secret. In time of war, you use it as a weapon. So if America has flying saucers, you don't fly them over New York or London or Copenhagen. You keep them at your secret base, and in time of war, then you use it. So I think that what is being reported are most likely craft from some other place.
Maybe they would do it to implant some kind of fear in the public. Couldn't that be the case?
Everything is possible, but what is more likely or less likely, I think the best explanation for the technology and all of the other factors involved, that these are visitors from some other world or perhaps many other worlds. For decades and decades, science said they can't be aliens visiting Earth because there's something called the speed of light limit. Einstein said nothing like a spaceship can travel faster than the speed of light. And even if aliens therefore are out there, they cannot travel from their worlds to our world. Well, beginning in the 1980s and continuing in the last 20 years, many scientists have published papers, over 100, in peer-reviewed scientific journals, explaining ways that it is possible to travel faster than the speed of light. And so we're at a point now where science itself is beginning to say what we thought was true 100 years ago, 50 years ago, we now are beginning to question. And we think that there may be ways that you can travel vast distances in a short period of time. And these are mainstream scientists who are now publishing these papers. They are not, kooky people or UFO researchers. These are scientists who teach at universities who say, if there is a civilization out there who is 1,000 years ahead of us or 1,000,000 years ahead of us, they can probably move around space, the galaxy, in ways that we cannot even conceive.
But then how about one of Einstein's most famous colleagues, Nikola Tesla? He talked about free energy, teleportation, and time travel. So that would mean that hyperspace and going faster than the speed of light would mean nothing, because if you can teleport from one place to the other or time travel, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. What I say is probably all of the above. If you have multiple choice tents, answer A, answer B, answer C, and D is all the above. I think what we're describing is all of the above. In this universe is so huge, there could be civilizations that have teleportation. They're pushing a button. They're here on Earth for a little while. They push a button again. They're back home. Other races, less advanced, have to get in a metallic ship and travel probably into what is called higher dimensional space.
We're not quite as developed as other races are.
Correct, but certainly more advanced than humans. But one race may be able to sit at home and manipulate the universe just by sitting in a chair and travel to other worlds and back, conceivably. Whereas a less advanced race will have to get into a craft that we would call a UFO and move from their world to our world.
But don't you think that we actually have developed that technology?
No.
In the military?
I do not.
You do not think so?
I do not.
A lot of people have reported that, who have spoken to military officials.
A lot of people report lots of things. I want to see the evidence. The things that I talk about publicly, it's anecdotal evidence. I can prove by hundreds and hundreds of documents that UFOs have flown around American nuclear weapon sites, and in some cases the weapons are impacted, they malfunction. There are hundreds of documents saying that. I've interviewed these 140 individuals, military launch officers, missile launch officers, who say that an object, circular object, hovered above their missiles and the missiles malfunction. Is that scientific proof that that has happened? No, but you have credible people. The U.S. government gave the trust to launch nuclear weapons. They were vetted, they were tested, they were level-headed, they weren't drinkers, they didn't smoke marijuana. They're very credible people, and 140 of them now have talked to me over the years saying UFOs shut down my nuclear.
But could those scientists possibly be bought by the government to do this work and implant this kind of information?
My sources are not scientists, they're military launch officers or targeting officers. The likelihood of that is not high. These people have waited years and years and years to come forward. They were afraid that if they spoke to me, they would go to jail, because many of them in the 1960s and 70s, they see these incidents, they were involved in these incidents. The military intelligence groups came in and say, tell us what you know and then forget what you know. Sign this piece of paper, and if you sign this and then you speak to anyone about what you know, you will go to jail. Mm-hmm. And so these people are very
or worse, maybe even.
At least jail. In my view, most of what you read about UFOs on the internet is wild speculation. It's not substantiated with fact. You have to separate the signal from the noise. What is the kind of rumor mill? What is the, let's talk about this, that, and the other, but we have no facts to support what we say? That's a waste of my time. I want to talk about the documents. I want to talk about the military witnesses, the eyewitnesses who were involved in these incidents. And
when did you start interviewing these people? When did it all begin for you?
My father was in the Air Force for 20 years, and in 1966 and 67, he was stationed, he was posted at a place called Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, which is a nuclear missile base. Without going into great detail.
You were born on this base, right?
Another base, Sandia Base. We're a nuclear base in New Mexico. But at Malmstrom in Montana, it was a Minuteman missile nuclear base, 150 nuclear missiles scattered in the countryside, underground in these silos. 10 missiles are controlled by a central launch control facility. There were 15 of those, so 150 missiles altogether. And the rumors that my father heard in this building he worked with had high-powered radar, military radar. They were picking up unknown objects flying around the missile sites and hovering over the missile sites. And this was in 1967. By 1973, there began to be in magazine articles and in books people who worked for the military or worked for the missile program who said, I know about that, and would talk about that, where UFOs would hover above missiles and the missiles would malfunction. So by 1973, I thought, well, I know a little bit about this. Other people are saying it's true. I think this is important. I think someone should get these witnesses' testimony on record. So I began interviewing and tape recording these people. And by 1981, I felt I had enough evidence to make a credible case this is real and going on. And I went out on the American College lecture circuit. I've spoken at over 500 universities in America and Oxford University in England, saying, here's what the documents say, here's what the military eyewitnesses say, draw your own conclusions.
Have you yourself ever encountered a UFO or been in the presence of extraterrestrials or interdimensionals?
I have seen 6 objects between 1971 and 2001 in the sky. All I can say is 2 of them were discs, flying saucers. One was cigar-shaped. Had no fins, no rocket exhaust. It was not a cruise missile. It was quite clearly a metallic cigar-shaped object. And all 3 of those objects made no noise. I saw them moving across the sky in broad daylight. And the other 3 objects I saw were plasma balls that were performing maneuvers. One did a right-angle turn, a U-turn, I should say, and zipped away.
Which was not a human military craft.
In my view, no. And that one was hovering over the city of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
So it wasn't even at the nuclear base you saw them?
Well, none of the objects I saw were near nuclear sites, no.
How many of the military veterans that you interviewed have come forward publicly like you and spoken about it with you?
Well, my book was published in 2008, and I mentioned about 90 names, I believe, 90-something names. But when my book came out, I was on Larry King Live. I held a press conference in Washington. CNN streamed that live. So as a result of this publicity I've been getting in the last 4 or 5 years, many more witnesses have approached me, and I now have 142 or 3 who have said I was involved. Now, when someone comes to me and says, I was a missile launch officer and I know about a UFO because it hovered over my missiles, the first thing I say is send me your military records, DD-214 form. It verifies that they were at those bases during those years. It doesn't say whether they saw a UFO or not, but it proves that they were launch officers or whatever. And so I start from there. Most of the credible witnesses that I've spoken to are very reluctant. I have to talk them into being interviewed. Some of them wait 5 years, 10 years. We'll talk, and I call them, and they say, no, maybe a little in the future. And some wait 10 years before they finally sit down and let me tape record them. Because they're concerned that, their retirement pay will suddenly go away, or the FBI will knock on their door or whatever. So, yeah.
Why is it so important, vitally important for you to actually speak out publicly about this and actually to urge the government to disclose the UFO phenomena?
That is the most difficult question for me to answer because I don't know the answer. I can't tell you why I'm so driven, but this is what I've done for 40 years. I worked a day job. I was a laboratory analyst for Philips Semiconductors. That's how I earned my living. But I've also been on the lecture circuit since 1981, and I feel compelled to let the American people know and the world. Now we have the internet, much more information exchange around the planet.
And now you're in Copenhagen for the Exopolitics Conference.
Exactly. And I just feel that if this planet is being visited by beings from elsewhere, and if one of the things they're doing here is monitoring and tampering with our nuclear weapons, that is something the governments do not have a right to keep from people everywhere. People in Denmark need to know the truth. People in America need to know the truth. People in China need to know the truth. So I don't say I have all the answers. I say that I have studied one aspect of the UFO phenomenon, and then I can verify beyond a reasonable doubt that whoever they are, however they get here, whatever their game plan is, I know one of the things they do is monitor and interfere with the functionality of nuclear weapons in both America and Russia.
Why do you think they do that?
My opinion is that they do not want humans who suddenly now have these weapons just in the last 70 years where we can literally destroy the whole planet. I mean, you know, we can create hundreds of millions of deaths. There's a phenomenon called nuclear winter, where if you explode enough nuclear weapons, there's enough soot and debris in the atmosphere carried by the jet stream. The northern hemisphere would be blanketed in such a dark shroud. You cannot grow crops, you cannot grow food. So you have hundreds of million people dead in the explosions, but then you have conceivably 1 billion or 2 billion humans starving because you can't grow crops for a year or two until the sky clears.
But why would so-called aliens or otherworldly beings be interested in what we're doing here on planet Earth?
I obviously don't know, but my opinion is that they perhaps are like a parent. Like parents, they see a young child about to touch a hot stove, slap the hand. You know, they don't want us to destroy this planet. But I say, you know, another possibility is they may have bases here under the ocean, and if we destroy the environment, we may destroy their operations here. Or, conceivably, they may want to invade planet Earth, and they do not want to inherit a, you know, destroyed radioactive planet, so they don't want us to go to war because they have selfish interests.
Why would they want to inherit the Earth? It's our planet, isn't it?
Well, if
human beings.
You know, what I'm saying is, if there are other races out there who can travel between worlds, one would suppose there are many of those races. Some may have agendas differing from other alien races' agendas. Some of them their world, for whatever reason, may be dying, and they need another world, and so they do want to come to Earth to take over, so to speak. I don't think that's likely based on the nuclear weapons evidence, but I think more likely they are trying to prevent a primitive race, humans, from doing damage to itself. And would that mean that they're moral and ethical? One could interpret it that way. Does that mean, on the other hand, there are some just very neutral scientific reason for them not wanting us to destroy the Earth? Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. All I say, the strength of my program, the reason why I am invited on Larry King, the reason why CNN shows up at my press conferences, is because I don't make claims that I can't verify, that I can't support. I say, here's what the documents say, here's what the vetted military witnesses say, draw your own conclusions.
And at your press conference, you said, I quote, "A paradigm shift will expand our minds, and religions, governments, social institutions may indeed be threatened by what is coming." And then you say, I quote, "A logical explanation for what is about to occur." But what is coming and what is about to occur, you think?
Well, again, I don't know the answer to that, but if indeed these are alien beings from other worlds, there are people in this world who their view of reality, the Bible, let's say, in America, there are very conservative Christians, right, primarily in the South, the southern states, but they interpret the Bible such that there's no life outside, there's no intelligent life outside the Earth. And if suddenly they are confronted with the reality, that suddenly says everything they believed and they think God says is wrong. Many of those people, if aliens come, they would probably think they're demons and working with the devil. And so religious institutions, what humans consider to be reality and our relationship with God, if there are other beings out...
That's a belief system, huh?
Belief system would be threatened. Governments, you know, let's say in America, the government, you know, America, a lot of our power around the world at this point in time, which sometimes we use for good and sometimes we don't use for good, in my view. I'm very embarrassed and ashamed of what America does, our government does around the world in many cases. It's based on our nuclear weapons. We're one of the few countries that has nuclear weapons to back up whatever we want to do. Suppose the aliens are here and they are trying to tell Washington to get rid of nukes, not to use nukes. Suddenly the government is going to be like this. You know, the aliens want this, the U.S. government wants that. If you know that they're trying to tell you to get rid of nukes, you don't want to tell people on TV they're here, because the people say, well, they seem to be wanting us to get rid of their nukes. you don't want to have your citizens questioning what you think is the best policy for America. So one reason you keep everyone in the dark is you just don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to let someone else say whether you should have nukes or not. You've decided we need nukes. So you don't want to open that can of worms or Pandora's box.
But it's been said by many researchers also studying the UFO phenomenon that the U.S. government is already in close contact with aliens and possibly working with them in military bases. And Eisenhower in 1953 or 4, I believe it was, also supposedly had meetings with aliens. But if they are already in close contact with them, why would something above from the skies suddenly try and come here and warn us not to use nuclear weapons?
Many people have made those claims that the U.S. government is working with aliens. I do not believe there's any evidence to support that that's true.
Because you haven't seen it?
Well, I haven't found documents, legitimate documents. I haven't found military eyewitnesses who say they were there at the time. The internet, you can read anything on the internet. I have a pet monster with a horn and it's purple. You can read that on the internet. Is it true? Maybe not. Probably not. So people claim that President Eisenhower met with aliens. And the thing, we were talking about this at the Exopolitics Denmark meeting that I just came from. Many people make many claims. I'm a researcher. If someone makes a claim, I say to them, give me the names of the people who are going to verify this. I want their addresses and phone numbers. If they kind of back up or make some excuse, then I'm not, I'll say, I'll listen to what you have to say, but I'm not going to believe what you have to say until you can provide credible data to suggest or totally verify what you're saying. And there's far more. 90% of what I read about UFOs on the internet are unproven claims, unsubstantiated claims. Some of them are just religious beliefs. Some of them are, there are mentally ill people who can type and say things online who, really, would think you're an alien and I'm an alien.
But there's also been researchers and people who work in military bases who've come out and said it. Even former MK Ultra mind-controlled governmental slaves have come out later and said, after deprogramming, that they witnessed this, that they experienced this under this closed government secret programming.
I don't believe those claims. I don't believe those claims.
Why not?
Because they've not provided any evidence that I would consider credible supporting data for documentation. For example, in the early 1980s, I helped expose a disinformation scheme being operated out of Kirtland Air Force Base, what's called Office of Special Investigations, where supposedly the aliens were working with the American government and we were flying joint aircraft missions or spacecraft missions to Mars. All sorts of stuff appeared in these documents. Linda Moulton Howe, a researcher, accepted all this as true without really trying to verify it, and has been making these claims all over the world for 25 years now that these documents prove that the aliens are working with the government. Well,
but it's very difficult to actually. It's very difficult to get some solid proof. It's very difficult to present it.
On the contrary, what I did was research these claims. And I and a man named Barry Greenwood, another man named Bob Todd, what we proved beyond any doubt was that this group OSI at Kirtland Air Force Base was forging documents. And as recently as 2009, one of the people involved with it, a man named Sergeant Richard Doty, admitted to me that he in fact was forging documents under orders, bogus documents about aliens meeting with Eisenhower and the US government. So, people make claims, I was involved in this, I was involved in that. Some gullible people who call themselves researchers, and they really probably are not, accept that and talk to the media about it. Meanwhile, me and some other people actually did real research, found out that the typewriter analysis, this was before, word processors, if you have flaws in typewriters, like a T is slightly lower and the W has a little mark on it, we found documents that allegedly were from the 1970s and the 40s, and they all have that identical flaw. And we have an independent letter from this Sergeant Richard Doty. He typed to a civilian, had all those identical flaws, and that typewriter is in Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico in the early 80s. And yet all these other forged documents showing the identical flaws were from supposedly the 40s, supposedly from the 70s.
So the fake documents were actually, what you're saying, they were actually implanted by the government or military officials?
Correct.
In order to to confuse the audience, the general population?
To make researchers and the public to run in circles. The Roswell...
Why would they do that?
To keep people in the dark about what's really happening. For example, Roswell, the alleged recovery of a crashed UFO. I believe that happened, and for example, there's a retired Air Force Brigadier General named Arthur E. Exon. Arthur Exon, retired general, has publicly said, and in writing and in audio taped interviews, that this was an alien spacecraft, that he was at Wright Field, later Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, renamed. When the debris came in, he was not directly involved, but he knew people who did the analysis. They said this was nothing like on Earth like this. Okay, so Roswell happened. Now, just when the Roswell story came out in the early 80s and was beginning to get some momentum, this same OSI agent, Richard Doty, contacted Linda Howe. She had $1 million budget to create a film for HBO network on the cover-up. They took her in and said, Linda, we like what you're doing. If you just work with us on our timetable, be a little patient, we will give you the film of the Roswell recovery operation. I have all this in writing. She is writing to HBO and they're writing to her. They're saying, Linda, you're behind schedule, get the film made. She's saying, my source at Kirtland Air Force Base says if we just are a little patient, we wait a little longer, they're going to give us the Roswell recovery film. This went on for months and months. Finally, HBO said, you're not getting the job done. We're taking our money back.
So there's a lot of purposely planned disinformation
in
and
this
fraud.
case, there's just an open and shut
by the
case.
U.S. government.
Correct. It's called disinformation.
Right.
And so what you have is a credible case.
To confuse the audience, the general population.
Well, for example, General Exxon says, okay, this is an alien spaceship that's been recovered. Linda Howe says, yes, and I was also given documents that said that the aliens are working with the government and I'm going to get the film of that recovery operation. Well, when that's proven to be a fraud, then people say, well, how do we know General Exxon isn't feeding us nonsense? So it discredits him by association. Linda Howe has done so much damage around the world, whether she accepts that fact or not, by passing all this bogus information off as fact. She did it not even a month ago in Washington at the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure. She mentioned a document called the SOM Field Manual, supposedly a military document talking about how you recover spaceships, what you do, crash spaceships. It's been proven as a forgery. There are one document expert that I've been in touch with found 50 factual errors. Linda Howe does not do that research. She's not an authority on that. And so she gets on camera in Washington and said, this has really stood the test of time. It stands up. Bull, it has not. And the document experts, if she would just talk to them and get off her ego, high horse, and talk to the people who've done the research, she would know that she's been duped, she's been suckered, and she, by talking about all this nonsense publicly, repeatedly over 20 years, is just creating a disinformation bonanza for the government.
So you don't think that the government at all has any involvement with UFOs or alien beings?
On the contrary, they know these things are real.
What do you think is the most profound, solid evidence of extraterrestrial existence?
Well, again, I don't take it that far. What I say is there are radar cases of objects from the 1940s to as recently as a year ago. Objects that are tracked on radar which can fly thousands of miles per hour, instantly stop in midair or instantly do right-angle turns. No one has produced any credible evidence to the public anywhere in the world that any country on Earth has craft that can do that. But the documents that have been released to the public through the Freedom of Information Act confirm that this was first being tracked in the 1940s. Objects flying in American airspace that were vastly beyond American technology. So in my view, I don't say that's proof of alien visitation. I say one likely explanation for these data is that these are craft from some other world.
Can we depend on all the information we can get from the Freedom of Information Act? Could some of that be implanted as well?
What you try to do is when you get a document is find witnesses that might still be alive who can corroborate what's in that. I've done that many times. What you also have to assume is, when these documents were written and describing these very amazing things, that law did not exist. The government agent who wrote that did not think that would ever be declassified or see the light of day. If it was very sensitive, that would probably be kept secret in perpetuity. But then in the 1970s, this law began to be used with some success. But it's not a panacea. It's not a completely viable way of accessing information because the CIA, for example, it's now known in references from other documents about top secret UFO documents that CIA has. If you write to them, they'll respond to your Freedom of Information request saying, we have no top secret documents on UFOs.
So you can't really depend on that, the
Well,
Freedom
that's
of
it.
Information Act.
I don't think they're feeding
That's also slightly vague.
I don't think they're feeding bogus documents. I don't think they're
You don't think that?
not the military.
That's a very important statement.
I'm unaware of any case where one could say that this was a document was forged and released through the FOIA. What happened with Linda Moulton Howe was she was led into this office at this counterintelligence group and handed these through the hand, given these to look at.
But it could be compartmentalization on need-to-know basis, that some people know more and some people know less, and it's just, it could happen, couldn't it?
Certainly. I mean, everything can happen. Any possibility under the sun. I would say, let's narrow it down. What have we found? What is the evidence we have in our hands?
But do you think that the governments in America and Europe and Russia know of alien existence and UFO existence, and they're concealing the evidence to the general public, right?
I won't use the word alien. What I will say is they know that there are advanced craft that have been tracked on radar that are vastly beyond even what America has now or Russia has now. And these reports go back to the 1940s. And they know that these craft exist. They know that they can outrun our fastest jets. They know, in my case, that many times they come in and hover over nuclear missiles and then the missiles malfunction. They know those things. Whether they know beyond a doubt whether, in fact, they have a crashed spaceship in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, like General Exxon says, I don't know. But they know that there are advanced technology operating here. And I think at the highest level, the people who make the decisions, make the policy, I think they know beyond any doubt that this is alien visitation.
How about some of the 140 people you interviewed? Have you never come across somebody who said that they've seen aliens or extraterrestrial beings at military bases and they're aware of the fact that the government is possibly working with aliens or have some of the technology?
Not one. Not one.
Not one.
Not one. And the people that I've interviewed, as I said earlier, they're very reluctant to talk to you. Some of them have second thoughts. They'll say, "Okay, I'll sit down with you," and then then they don't return my phone calls. And finally, it's 5 years later before they sit down. The people talking about aliens working in Hangar B with our troops and all this, those are the ones that just gush the information. They'll come to you, come interview me. I want to tell you all my secrets. I know what the government's doing. Blah blah blah. Those are the liars, the ones who can prove with their service records.
But what if they want to get the message across as strongly as you do?
Well, if they're making it up, it doesn't matter what their motivation is.
What if they're not making it up?
Well, in my view, if you're going to make a claim that the government is working with aliens, then you need to have some evidence to produce that, to verify that to some degree or another.
What is your best evidence when you go out and lecturing and talking to people and give speeches like yesterday?
I have documents from the Air Force, the FBI, and the CIA that say UFOs visited nuclear weapons sites on many, many, many occasions during the Cold War era. The documents say that. Then I have found in the cases that I've learned about witnesses, I've spent 40 years. It's 140 people over 40 years is not that many people. I've interviewed probably 1,000 veterans who, they say, yeah, I heard about it through the grapevine. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. If you were an eyewitness or, you were directly involved and I want to talk to you. And some of the people who say I was involved and I'm never going to talk to you, and I've had people say that, they say don't call me again. So you use the evidence that you have and try to make some sense of it. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, many pieces are missing, but there's enough pieces there, in my view, to prove that these advanced craft, not only here, but in the former Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, there was a period in the early 90s where Western researchers and journalists went to Russia, and George Knapp, who works in America, actually got documents confirming that the Russians had incidents, the Soviets, where objects hovered over their missiles and the missiles, have mechanical problems. Same thing that my sources are telling me from America. There's a case, the Bentwaters case in England in December of '80, where we had one of the largest nuclear weapons storage areas. The deputy base commander of that base, Colonel Charles Halt, said he heard on a radio that a saucer hovered over it and sent down laser-like beams. Okay, this is in 1980. Well, when the Soviet Union collapsed in '91, a document from KGB came out from 1989, July, saying that an object hovered over the Kapustin Yar missile base in the Soviet Union where nuclear warheads were stored in this one building. Saucer hovers over it, sends down laser-like beams. The Russians had the same problem that the Americans had in England.
Moving on to another subject, that's the Dr. Stephen Greer's new Sirius film, and he also did the 2001 Disclosure UFO project. What do you think about that? Have you taken part in that?
No, and I don't really consider Dr. Greer to be a very credible spokesman for this subject matter.
Really? Why not?
For a variety of reasons. Much of what he said is speculative as opposed to being able to document what he says. For example, there was a lot of hype about this Sirius film, a small alien body being found, and when it was analyzed, it was found to be human DNA, just a deformity, a dwarf type fetus or small entity. Human, quite human. Well, that was known before the film came out, and it appears in the film and so on.
But he's actually working in the same field as you. He also wants to disclose the UFO phenomena and to tell the people about it.
But does he do a credible job of what he says he's attempting to do? In my view, no. And I've made no secret of that over the years. There are people who make speculative statements if you ask them to verify it. I have 140 military witnesses. I have their military records proving they were at these bases. They're independently describing the same number of things. Stephen Greer, on the other hand, and other people who call themselves ufologists or disclosure advocates, much of what they say is based on, speculative thinking. What would the aliens do if we knew they were here? How would they react to us? They would give us free energy. Certainly, we wouldn't need to use oil and nuclear power anymore. Well, probably not. If you're an alien race who's visiting Earth, you know that our history is to make weapons and kill each other with as much efficiency as possible. If you're a smart alien, you're not going to give stupid humans high technology because the odds are we're going to try to make weapons out of it, not heat our homes or drive our cars cleanly.
So the reason you don't like Stephen Greer's work is it's not because of rivalry. It's because it would be better to work together in doing the same thing, trying to get the same message across to the people.
I disagree. What I do is based on archival documentation, military witnesses discussing what other people do, make declarative statements based on speculative thinking, no evidence to support what they say in large part. Or at the citizen hearings in Washington, this business of MJ-12, these fake documents, some of the people said, my witnesses are telling me about MJ-12. Well, yeah, they did that to Linda Moulton Howe. They led her around by the nose 30 years ago.
You don't believe the MJ-12 exists?
That's exactly right. MJ-12.
Really?
These are the documents that I'm telling you. These are the ones that I help expose. They were typed up by this agent Richard Doty, and he lied about it for 30 years and finally admitted it to me in an email in 2009 that he forged documents for government.
And that couldn't be disinformation also?
No, other people have found, again, look at the specifics. You can't just talk in general terms about, is this real, is this not real? Take each piece of evidence, see what it supposedly says. What it supposedly said, for example, there was a document supposedly from Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, dated 1977, that talked about an alien on top of a missile silo and guards were shooting at it and so on. Well, if you look at it, the typewriter flaws in that this is, again, pre-word processor. This is the old-fashioned typewriters. The letters had various signatures. The T was dropped. The W had a little mark off the top of one of the lines and so on. Well, you also find those identical flaws in the typewriter from Richard Doty's typewriter at OSI.
Yeah, you said that. Have you never been threatened by military officials not to speak about this?
I have been harassed. I went on the college lecture circuit in December of 1980, September of 1981, and by February of 82, when I would call military witnesses that appear in my book and say, may I tape record our conversation? They say, sure. For all of 82, when I did that, as soon as I hung up the phone, within 1 minute or 5 minutes or half an hour, I would get a call. Someone was on the other end saying nothing. I could hear background noises, and then they would hang up the phone. So quite clearly someone, and that only happened immediately after one of my conversations with these military sources.
So it's not something that's ongoing?
There have been variations on that. This is, again, when I first began to get some national publicity, and I think that whoever was doing that, CIA, NSA, who knows, was just trying to scare me off of doing it. I'm too stupid to be scared.
But on the other hand, have you not been invited to join the military, to be like a disinformer?
No.
No?
No.
That has never happened?
I think that no. And Bill Moore, who was a well-known civilian researcher, he admitted that he was recruited by this Richard Doty, who duped Linda Howe. And I published my first paper on MJ-12 and the fact that these documents were being forged by OSI at Kirtland Air Force Base. I published that on March 1st, 1989. And Bill Moore, a civilian researcher, showed up at my door in Albuquerque and tried to intimidate me into retracting all of this. 3 months later, on July 1st, 1989, he spoke at the MUFON Organization International Symposium. He admitted finally 90% of what I said in my paper, that he was recruited by OSI, that he was told that if he spied on other researchers, a group called APRO, and reported what those people were doing back to the Air Force, the Air Force said they would give him very top secret information. Same thing they told Linda Howe. So Bill Moore, even though he was, basically, agreeing to spy on a fellow researchers for the government, and everybody thinks that's quite despicable, he at least had the honesty to say, yes, I was suckered, I was duped by Air Force counterintelligence. So was Linda Howe, but Linda Howe's never been willing to admit it because her ego or her general gullibility.
What are your thoughts on alien abductions? Are they real, or are some of them real, or are they actually, as some people say, military, holographic, mind control methods, maybe using drugs and experimenting on people, trying to convince them that it's aliens, but it's really people who are abducting them to do experiments on people?
I do not research that subject, so I have an informed opinion because I've read many of the researchers' works.
What is your own opinion then?
Well, that's where I'm going with this. I'm simply saying that what I'm about to say is not because I'm an expert or that I've researched that. I'm saying that, for example, Dr. John E. Mack of Harvard University, he's now deceased, he spent many years studying this abduction phenomenon in secrecy. He worked at Harvard, he taught at Harvard Medical School. He knew that, Harvard would just freak out if he publicized that he was studying UFO abductees. But he finally published a book in 1994 confirming that he was studying this. He said, in my view, this is real. This does involve intelligence of a higher order. And that's, there are liars, there are mentally disturbed people who are saying that they're being abducted by aliens, but within this group of this spectrum of possibilities, there are also credible people reporting this. And Dr. Mack believed that indeed some number of humans are having these confrontations.
So you actually think it does happen, that aliens do abduct human beings for experimentation?
Dr. John Mack came to that conclusion, and I've read his books, and I believe that his methodology is
You found it credible?
Based on science. And as far as the theory that the U.S. government is engaging in mind
control?
Yeah, and making people think they're being abducted by aliens. This is a worldwide phenomenon. There are school children in Zimbabwe and Africa who are coming in and talking about having interaction with landed UFOs and little entities, talking to them telepathically. So the U.S. government does not have that power.
But the MK Ultra mind control program was made quite famous, and that was they came out publicly about that.
Correct.
That they actually did use mind control, trauma-based mind control on children and young people and older people.
Absolutely no link to UFOs.
You don't think so?
There's no evidence.
There's no evidence.
The MK Ultra documents talk about, they were,
Don't you think it's all interconnected in some kind of way?
Sure, anything's possible.
Right.
Show me the evidence. The evidence that talks about it was like controlling.
But sometimes it's difficult to show the evidence.
Well,
Evidence, if it's all concealed, if it's all secret, if it's all a part of an X-file, so to speak.
Then all one can say is that the evidence suggests that this is going on or doesn't suggest this is going on. You can't say with certainty, you can't prove it, you can't disprove it. But there are no credible documents, there's no verifiable evidence that MK Ultra had anything to do with UFOs or abductions, false abductions or anything.
You actually spoke about the fact that the aliens, the UFOs, were deactivating the missiles at the nuclear bases because of a threat of the Third World War.
Well, again, what are the facts and what are my opinion of the facts? The facts are...
Do you think a world war is going to happen?
The facts are that there are 140 military witnesses saying that UFOs monitor our nuclear weapons. There are hundreds of documents saying that, independent of these witnesses, that have now been released. So that much we know. And what is being described are craft that are saucer-shaped, that are vastly superior in terms of their aerodynamic capabilities, their performances. Are those aliens? We don't know. Are they attempting to keep us from going to World War III? We don't know. That's speculative on my part. But you cannot say, the documents do not say these are aliens trying to prevent us from going to World War III. There's no reality to that in the documents or the witness testimony. That is my interpretation of what is being described.
All right. Today it's the 9th of June 2013, and right now the Bilderberg meeting is happening in Watford in London, and has been taking place the past couple of days with the global elite meeting there and discussing subjects. As now it's become more public known because it's been a secret group for a long time.
Right.
Do you think that a lot of those people who are attending the Bilderberg meeting is actually aware and is part of concealing the UFO awareness that we're not supposed to know about this?
I don't know that much about the group, but what I've read publicly about them, there are some number of people who think that these groups are all powerful and they control the world entirely. It's much more complicated than that.
Well, it's the most powerful people in the world who's meeting.
Well, in human history, at any given point in time, the people who have the money have the power, and they generally do things that are in their own best interests as opposed to in everybody else's best interest. So what's new? So what? I mean, should we fight against that? Okay, maybe. How do you do that? How do you say, these people don't deserve to have their money? Unless you go to the communist government model and say, if you're rich, we'll take all your money and therefore your power. Unless that is your view of things.
Well, they're trying to push the control system on the population.
No doubt. Not necessarily systematically, but if you have the money and you have the power and you believe this ought to be done and that not done, then yeah, in the U.S. government, in the Congress, the Senate and the House, politicians are being fed millions of dollars by corporation, Monsanto, for example, some other corporation. They want this done. They will pay a politician to do what they want done. So what's new? And I'm not saying it's good or right, but I'm saying it's always gone on, it's always going to go on. You
Well,
know,
unless people are being made aware of it.
well, believe me, I'm sympathetic to people who want to try to disrupt that and to have a more fairness in the world. You know, the question is, will humankind evolve to the point where, say, 1,000 years from now or 10,000 years from now, everyone will be equal and treat each other fairly? I'm not that optimistic, you know, and so
Why not? Don't you think that would be? Don't you think that's worth working for?
Human nature. You know, I think you know, 3,000 years ago we were killing each other, and right now we're killing each other, and in another 3,000 years we'll still probably be killing each other. You have what I want, therefore, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to kill you. You know, will humankind evolve beyond that and become more spiritual? Who knows? Wouldn't that be nice? But let's talk about what I know about the Bilderbergers and all these other supposedly the Illuminati, all the high-level people who have all the power. I'm unaware of any credible evidence to say that they know UFOs are real and they're working with the aliens, or at least, at the very least, trying to keep the truth of alien visitation from the rest of us. Some of them may know it and suspect it, but they're certainly not, I think, directly involved with the cover-up. You know, if you're a senator or a rich person and you have a high-level military contact, you probably had drinks and over drinks talked about, this is what I know, don't tell anyone. I think that goes on, sure. But does that mean they're all in lockstep and they're all working together to keep the fact that aliens are here? Nah.
So what is your most important mission with all of this? What do you want to gain from this? What is it that you particularly want now?
In terms of my public speaking, in terms of trying to acquaint people with the information I've gathered, my attitude is simply speculate all day long. You're wasting your time and you're wasting my time if you want to tell me about all your speculation. What I've done is spent 40 years verifying that what we call UFOs, one of the things they do, whoever are flying them, is to monitor and disrupt nuclear weapons. That's proved beyond a reasonable doubt in my view. Therefore, since I've done the work and I can verify what I say, I think people have a right to know that information. Once you receive it, or she receives it, or he receives it, do with it whatever you will. You don't have to believe what I'm saying. I'm saying, here's the data. Now you have the credible data. Evaluate it any way you wish. That's fine by me.
So your mission is to disclose the UFO secrets
I'm
and the fact that it does exist, and the people should have the right to know that aliens are visiting Earth, and we should be aware of it.
And again, you use the word aliens. I'm saying that
Extraterrestrials or interdimensionals.
I don't even go that far. I say I have evidence that there are sophisticated craft flying around American airspace all over the world that are vastly beyond American technology or Russian technology or Danish technology. And what is going on, one of the things that whoever are flying these are monitoring and disrupting nuclear weapons. The Russians had the problem, the Americans had the problem. That is what I'm saying. Now, then I say my opinion of all of that is that these are probably extraterrestrials. I don't say the data say that they are extraterrestrials. I say my interpretation of the data is that they are extraterrestrials.
And you urge the government to go out and disclose it and talk about it publicly.
I don't. Well, I do, but I don't expect that to happen. You know, they don't care what I think. You know, if you.
But that is your mission.
Well, not the government. You know, I think they're going to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. Nothing I'm going to say. I don't say we need to talk to the Senate or the president. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're primarily interested in being reelected and satisfying the corporate people who are paying them to be reelected. That's their primary mission. They don't care about what I think they should do. I view it as a grassroots educational program. Tell as many people, you know, if you think the government's going to take you seriously or me seriously, you know, waste your time if you want. I won't. I will tell you what I know. You can do what with the data as you wish. Believe it, not believe it. I don't care. But don't, you know, I'm never going to be petitioning the White House. I'm never going to be saying there should be congressional hearings. It's a waste of time.
And all your information, your research, and your interviews with 140 people about the UFO phenomena is in this book, UFOs and Nukes, Extraordinary Encounters at Nuclear Weapon Sites.
Correct. And it's
And where can we get it? Where can the people get this book?
It's self-published. It's at my website, UFOhastings.com. We have what are called scalpers, people who buy it from me for $23.95 and then resell it on Amazon for $85 or $100. So if you're a rich person, go straight to Amazon, and you don't mind spending all that extra money. If you want to get the book directly from my website, it's $23.95.
UFOs and nukes. Robert Hastings, thank you so much for doing this interview with Age of Truth TV. I'm very happy, and it's been wonderful to meet you. Thank you very
interview.
much.
Excellent,
Thank
excellent
you.
questions. You know, I've given 1,000 interviews over 35 years, and this is one of the best.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Seriously.
Thank you so much.
I don't say that to people. You won't find me saying that on tape. You won't find any of that. So.
Wow, that's such a privilege. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.